Imagine being expected to buy a home when you're 18. You're told to go out and pick out a home that you like, no questions asked, get something that's comfortable for you. Don't worry about qualifying for a loan based on your income. We'll give you whatever mortgage is needed. And in fact, you don't have to make payments on that mortgage for some time. You can live in it for quite a while. If you want to borrow a little bit extra to repair it, fix it up, buy furniture, put a car in the driveway, whatever, it's totally up to you. Now there is a little bit of fine print in this contract, and it is this. The debt that you take on for this house is yours, no matter what. You can't walk away from it. You can't bankrupt it. The home, by the way, that you're buying has no equity, so there is no trading or swapping it. The only thing you can do is pay it off. If you bought in a bad neighborhood, too bad. If you want to move to a different city, too bad. If you bought a 4-bedroom home in a gated community when what you really needed was a 1-bedroom condo, too bad. Sounds like a ridiculous arrangement for an 18-year-old, doesn't it? Yet it also sounds eerily similar to our student loan funding system today. In the last 10 years, there's been an absolute explosion in student lending in America. In the year 2004, we had $200 billion in student loans. And this year, 2014, we've crossed the $1.2 trillion mark, a 500% increase in 10 years. To say this is not sustainable would be an understatement, probably of the century. If we allow it to continue, that means that 10 years from now, in 2024, we'll have $6 trillion in student loans. Another 10 years, 2034, we will have $30 trillion in student loans, which is almost twice our country's gross domestic product. That's all of the goods and services bought and sold in our country in a year. Twice in student loans in 20 years. The fact of the matter is that the economic realities of college have changed, but our stories and our beliefs and our buying behaviors have not. So $30 trillion is a huge amount of money. So I want to bring this down to reality. This is $30,000. It is the average amount of student loan debt held in America. So this is the average, which means, and it smells wonderful, by the way. My wife said she'd kill me if I lost it. This is the average. It means that some people have close to zero, and some people have as much as 2 to 10 times this amount in student loan debt. Now, I have a confession to make. I borrowed 2/3 this amount of money to go to school, and I loved college. I loved it. Are you going to college soon? This is for you. So 2/3 is what I borrowed to go to school, and I love my college experience. My dad called my college experience a 4-year break from reality. I called it the longest and most expensive party I've ever been to. And to be fair, I learned some things in college. I learned that statistics is not for me. I learned that freshman year. But I also learned how to study. I learned how to write papers. I learned how to present. I learned how to work in teams and pull all-nighters. And I learned how to be a critical thinker. Fast forward to today, I have 3 little critical thinkers of my own. And when the third one was born, my wife and I decided to go see a financial planner and find out how much it would cost to send our little critical thinkers to college, the same alma mater we came from. And we went to this financial planner, and he plugged in their birth dates and inflation and tuition increases and all of that. And he came up with a number, what it would take to send our 3 children to a 4-year state institution. And the number he came up with was $750,000. Now, if you think that sounds obscene, it is. But it's also accurate. My school, my alma mater, was about $12,000 a year when I went. It's $24,000 and change today. I have a feeling that by the time my daughter goes, it could be $50,000. By the time my boys go, it could be 60 or more. Take that times 4, we're real close to the $750,000 by the time we factor in trips to Target and Walmart. My youngest son is 6 years old. That means I have 12 years to save this amount of money before they go. Assuming 12 years and 144 months, that means I just need to save $5,208 per month. 2 thoughts come to mind when I see that number. Number one is no matter how much I loved my college experience, no matter how much I desperately want my children to have a similar college experience to my wife's, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? I cannot justify that investment when real wages over the past 10 years have either stayed flat or declined. The second thing that comes to mind is for the families that can't afford to sock away thousands of dollars a month, most of them, their students will borrow the money to go to school, adding to a further indebtedness and an already struggling economy. The economic realities of college have changed, but our beliefs, the stories around it, and our buying behavior has not. So there are three realities that have really changed that I want to share with you today. The first one is the job market. Since the 1970s, generations of students have heard the narrative, go to school, get a degree, get a good job. And for about 25 to 30 years, that advice was actually pretty solid. It was. And then about 10 years ago, things changed. Graduate production outpaced job creation. And so the story had to change to match reality, though it never did. The story today is this: go to school, borrow handsomely to do so, get a degree, and then you might struggle financially for the first few years as you're trying to make ends meet because you might be underemployed. As an example, in the year 2013, we graduated nearly 4 million college students from colleges and universities. In the year 2014, this year, nearly 1 million of them from last year are still unemployed or underemployed. I met Caitlin at a conference where I was presenting, and she came up to me. Actually, her friends ushered her up to me, and they said, "Tell him your story." Caitlin told me her story. She said at 19, her academic advisor came to her and said, "What you should do is a 3-year bachelor's, 2-year master's program." So she did. She came out at 23, graduated with an MBA in human resources, spent the first 2 years of her career looking for work, trying to find a job for that major. She was overqualified for entry-level jobs, underqualified for the higher-level jobs, and she spent 3 years bouncing around from company to company trying to make enough money to afford the student loan payments and a life outside of that. At the age of 28, Caitlin owes $117,000. She lives at home with her mom and dad. She has discovered a passion for copy editing, a job that does not require an advanced degree, nor will it pay enough to cover the bills that she has on a monthly basis. And most damaging and upsetting to me was what she confided in me. She said, "Adam, I'm afraid that I will never pay these loans off before I die." The economic realities of college have changed, but our stories, our beliefs, and our buying behavior has not. To further complex the issue, we're giving this decision to 18-year-olds. And I say this with the most love and biological accuracy as humanly possible. 18-year-olds, while legally adults, are children mentally. They are. I was one. 18-year-olds have no prefrontal cortex yet in their brain. It doesn't actually fully grow until they're 25. The prefrontal cortex is what allows you to make short and long-term decision-making. It's what allows for probable prediction. It's sometimes called the seat of good judgment. Asking a 19-year-old Caitlin if she wants to be an HR executive is like asking my 11-year-old who she's taking to senior prom. Put another way, if you ask the 18-year-old me if I wanted a tiger cub my freshman year as a mascot for my dorm room, I'd have been like, "Dude, tiger cub, awesome." Sweet. My prefrontal cortex was not around. It would not have registered that by the time I'm a senior, this Bengal tiger is now marking its territory, eating my furniture, possibly my friends, and costing me a fortune in tiger chow. It wouldn't register. But at some point, my 22, 25-year-old self might say, "Why didn't anyone tell me this was going to be a Bengal tiger?" Or, heard more aptly senior year, upon exit counseling, "Wait a minute, I borrowed how much? There's no way I borrowed that much money. No way." The other thing that's changed is student loans. Student loans have changed. I think an 18 to 20-year-old conceptually has no idea what $30,000 to $100,000 really is in debt. They don't. They've never made a full-time income. They've never paid that kind of debt off before, so conceptually, they have no idea how much that is. It's just a number. So, what do we do with that? What do we do with that number, and how do we bring students up to fit into that? The student loan system. You know, what happens is there's no distinguishing between majors and the amount of money someone can make. So someone who's an engineering major can borrow just as much as someone who's a French literature major, and vice versa. 6 months before graduation, an engineering major is going to be courted by engineering firms. The French literature major will spend the next year of their life wandering around wondering, where did all the French literature jobs go? Not really sure. It's a huge problem. And so we're looking for a solution. I recently learned of a process called hormesis. Hormesis is a biological phenomenon whereby there is a positive effect by getting small doses of something that would be otherwise lethal in large doses. And it occurred to me that student loans, if in an average or moderate amount, actually has a beneficial effect. Because there's great benefit in someone going through school, having the experience, and being able to afford their life afterwards. But too much of the toxin becomes toxic. And all you have to do is look at the levels today of student loan delinquencies and defaults. 1 in 3 students are at 30 days delinquent. 1 in 5 are beyond 90 days in default. It's $200 billion of the $600 billion that's in repayment right now. And it's not their debt. This is all backed by the government. This is quickly becoming our debt, not theirs. So at this point in the conversation, usually people say, Adam, are you against higher ed? Are you anti-education? And I'm not. I'm very pro-education. I'm just against mortgaging the next 25 years of your life to get it. That's all. I think that more critical thinkers would be an amazing thing. I really do, preferably in Congress. Yeah, applaud for that. They need it, sure. Why not? I have daydreams of classrooms of critical thinkers sitting around in college daydreaming how to make society better. But as Professor Emeritus from MIT, Noam Chomsky, once said, students who acquire large debts putting themselves through school don't sit around thinking about changing society. They can't afford the time to think. One of the things that I think has changed, the last thing that I think has changed, is the college experience. Now, my college experience, while utterly amazing, and I graduated in 1997, so if you're doing the head math, I'm 30 several. I loved my college experience, but it's vastly different than today's. The dorms I stayed in were fashioned after Swiss prisons. I'm sure of it. The bunk beds on which we slept were left over from the Civil War era. And we had choices in our dining center. The choice was, tonight you can eat lasagna or not eat lasagna. That is your choice. Today, there's an all-out amenities war on college campuses. Colleges compete based on how many gyms have rock walls, the quality of their food, the proximity to a high-end coffee shop, and the style of housing that they have on campus. Great professors and a high placement rate upon graduation are merely a plus for most students. And my fear on this is that in the next several years, 18-year-olds will make their choice of college based on which one has a pool where you can swim with the dolphins. That's my fear. So I don't know the answer. That's the problem. And I don't blame the schools, the students, the government. It's not pointing fingers is not my mission. The enemy is the problem. The enemy is the debt. The debt is what keeps us from being creative as a society. I don't know the answer, but I have lots of questions. And I invite critical thinkers everywhere, college educated, graduated or not, to join me in asking some what-if questions. Questions like, what if a bachelor's degree could be gotten in 2 to 3 years maximum? What if we could compress the amount of time? It would shorten the amount of time in school. We'd borrow less, and much like a TED Talk, when you compress the time, only the best content remains. What if amazing companies like Starbucks said they would pay for some of their employees' higher ed costs? Would more and more millennials working there in part-time jobs, would they borrow less? Would they have more freedom and flexibility upon graduation? What if we charged banks and we said the profits you're making on the backs of students paying off loans right now was plowed back into scholarships that would replace some of the Pell Grants being lost in the government right now? What if? What if other amazing, innovative companies like Google came out and said, we really don't care about degrees so much, we'll train on the job? A company where 14% of their teams don't have a college degree, and an even greater number of them now don't have any college experience whatsoever. Would that now sweep across the country? What if we made that change? The last what if is this. What if we change the narrative in schools? What if we change the narrative in schools that college is a path to success? but it's not necessarily the only path to success. What about getting a shortened IT degree? What about taking on an apprenticeship in the trades? What about a gap year? What about joining the military or a dozen other paths that you can take and still be successful? What if? I don't know the answer. But I believe that if enough critical thinkers get together and ask the right questions, then in that, we will find some ideas worth spreading. Thank you.